Welcome back to another lesson with the Quadrant 2 Project Management Series. My name is Kurt Bell. I'm your Q2PM today. We'll be covering step 3 in the project lifecycle. That's our 10-step process by which we ensure that we run a project as completely as possible from beginning, middle, through the end. And in this particular lesson, we're going to be focusing on the evaluation phase review. So in the first 3 steps of the 10-step process, the first 3 steps are the pre-project evaluation phase, where we first prepare the business case, identifying the what? Does it, David?
The problem.
Yep, identifying the business problem that really need the customers coming to us to talk about, because oftentimes what they tell us is the problem may not be the whole picture, or may not even be the picture at all. So by taking a little bit of time to really make sure that we've identified the problem up front, we're going to save a lot of time and headache later. Step 2 is the project proposal. What are we identifying in the proposal?
The options they have for the solution.
That's right. And one of them will probably be?
Our recommendation.
Our recommendation, right. Customers really love it when they know that we've heard what their problem is, and then we come back at them with a well thought out menu of solutions. Now sometimes there may not be any more than one solution, but at least we've given it some thought and we know that there are the other options, the other options are in fact out there. And they really love it when we give them a recommendation, especially executive level sponsors who have a lot on their plate. If you just throw a list of options at them and say, choose one, they're gonna feel like, well, what did I hire you for, right? Which one do you think I should choose? And then if we just say, choose A because I think it's the best, well, okay, well, maybe that helps a little bit. But if I say, choose A because we've got some pros and cons and we have some assumptions, and here's the reason why we recommend A, they are going to love you for that. But it's not all about being loved by our executives. It's all about getting the problem solved in the best possible way. Okay, let's jump into it. And I'm going to switch over here to our document. And switch the camera. There we go. So if you're watching this online, it comes down, and we have these classes every week here at RCIC. You are welcome to join us in person. Otherwise, you can see all the lessons online here or on YouTube. Let's go. The document that you see on the screen right now is the phased project charter for the Department of Social Services Windows 10 project. This is a large project to basically upgrade all of their thousands, more than 5,000 systems across more than 30 offices across the county of Riverside, upgrading all those systems from legacy Windows 7 and Windows 8.1 to Windows 10. We also threw in a nice refresh component where we're refreshing old hardware. So it was a very complex multi-year project. Now, I've already shown you the business case, and I've already explained to you the project proposal. What I'm going to do now is a little bit different. I'm going to do my evaluation, and the evaluation to me occurs when my sponsors agree that they understand what the project is and they've made a decision. And for the benefit of role playing, I'm going to ask Juan and David to, because you're sitting here in the room with me, to be my mock sponsors for this project. Okay? All right, so that reason I need 2 sponsors is I need a sponsor from both agencies, right? RCIT has a sponsor, and so does DPSS, the Department of Public Social Services. So in your case, David, we're just going to call you Anita. Or actually, okay? Actually, I'm not going to give the last name away because that would give someone's formal name away.
He's DPSS, I'll be RCIT. Is that where you're going? Or no, the other way around. RCIT.
He's RCIT, that's right.
And I'll be DPSS.
And I just I violated one of my rules of thumb, which is managers and managers and above are always addressed by last name. So I'll just call you Ms. Jones. Okay, so yeah, you're Anita Jones, but you know who you really are.
You know who you are.
All right, so you are the RCIT sponsor, and I would invite you to the meeting to go over the project proposal, because you're one of the persons that's going to sign on the dotted line, not today, but later. So, Juan, you are going to be Ms. Studebaker.
Can I be a Chevy?
You cannot be a Chevy or an Edsel. Okay. All right, but you both get to be ladies today, so. I should have given this more forethought. Sorry. Moving right along. Yes, that's right. So anyway, the important point is this meeting needs to occur with the stakeholders attendance. The stakeholders being, as I like to say, the people who care, the people who sign the checks, the people who make the decisions that keep the project going. They're not involved with all the nitty-gritty, but I need them to sign the document. They're signatories. In fact, everybody that's going to be a signatory on this contract needs to be in attendance. That would include the BRM and any fellow project managers. But let's jump into it. So I don't need to go over the business case. Why? Because we already got approval on that, right? We built the business case, we got the sponsors to agree previously. Then we went away and we came up with some solutions. Here's the business case over here. And you can go back and take a look at the previous videos if you want to explore that business case in detail. Now we're coming on to the project proposal, which we reviewed last time we were together. But we're gonna review it again, but I'm gonna do it differently. I'm gonna go into acting mode. Okay, we're gonna have a mock meeting. I am the project manager. You are Ms. Let's just call you Ms. I'm no Mr. Can I just call you Mr. Gonzalez?
Yeah.
Yeah, just dispense with the role playing. Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Ugarte, you are you are my agency sponsor, customer sponsor. And we're going to role play, and I'm going to show you how I present the document. I do it in a very particular fashion. I read everything. That's why it's important to be able to read carefully, slowly, and I do this in such a way that I pause and I explain to the customers, I am going to read this document to you. I know that you can read, but this gives us all a chance to reach consensus together. And the document is live in edit mode, so we can make changes right there on the spot, and that happens a lot. So don't expect your project proposal to be completed in one meeting. You're probably going to get a lot of feedback from them. One way you can mitigate that is to send them the proposal, and I highly recommend this. Send them the proposal 2 weeks ahead of time and ask for their feedback. That can help you a lot too. You can adjust the proposal accordingly. But be prepared to go back to the drawing board in a way. Here we go, and we've got 17 minutes left. And I'm going to say action, and we're going to start the meeting with our sponsors. Action. Well, Mr. Ugarte, Mr. Gonzalez, thank you very much for joining us today. We're here to go over the project proposal for the Windows 10 DPSS project. As you know, this is a project to upgrade legacy Windows systems throughout the county for Department of Social Services. Thank you for your past participation in the business case, where we tried to really identify the problem that we needed to address, and we reached agreement on that. I took the business case back to RCIT, where I worked with our team, and we identified some potential solutions. We just came up with one main solution, and I'm going to share that solution with you right now. And I'm going to actually read the document. I'm going to stop after every couple of paragraphs, every a couple of sentences or paragraph, and we'll digest it. And if you have questions, we'll talk about it. And we can edit this on the fly. So if we want to, we can make the changes right now. The goal in the next 15 minutes is to get to the end of the project proposal and hopefully reach an agreement about what we're going to do. If so, then we'll have a handshake on that. No signature just yet, okay? The signature comes when we're all done with laying out the details of when and how we're going to do that. Please don't expect to see any dates in this part of the document. There are no dates, just levels of effort. This will tell you, if you choose this solution, how much time it will take to do it. Once we get an agreement that we're going to do this, that's when the dates will be put in. And that agreement, if it happens today, the dates will be put in tomorrow. I'll be adding dates as soon as tomorrow if we reach agreement today. So with that, any questions before I start? Okay, very good. So Section B, project proposal. Project vision. The Department of Public Social Services has already successfully completed 2 of 3 phases in the Windows 10 upgrade project. The first phase upgraded C4 workstations, while Phase 2 addressed workstations in use with CWS, CMS, as well as coexistence. The last phase of this project will upgrade all remaining DPSS workstations which were not upgraded during Phase 1 and 2. The final phase of this project will be simply called Windows 10 DPSS. Now, of course, I know as DPSS yourself, you understand C4 and CWS, CMS, and coexistence. So I won't need to, just breaking for a second, I don't need to explain the things that the customers obviously will know. These are very common terms within that organization. And Mr. Gonzalez, I would have brought you up to speed as well on that as well. Does anybody have any questions about that, describing that?
Very clear.
Okay, the next paragraph. A decision was made by DPSS to place the Windows 10 DPSS project on hold after Phase 2 was complete. This was done in order to allow DPSS and RCIT to plan and execute a hardware deployment and refresh project, which is scheduled to complete by October 31st, 2018. DPSS Assets has assessed there will be 1,960 workstations requiring upgrade as of January 1st, 2019. That concludes our project vision. Is that clear to everybody? Do you have any questions? Okay. And usually if you've done a good job, they won't have any questions because they were participants in outlining the vision for us in the first place in the business case. Okay, now be careful, just a tip. Be sure to stop and take a breath. Sometimes I find that, especially when I first started doing this, that I saw this as a chore to get through, to read through these paragraphs, to get it over with. Especially when I was dealing with managers, especially when I was dealing with executives. It's one thing to be a dad and read to my daughter. It's quite another thing to be reading to an executive who can very well read for themselves. But you'll lose their attention and they won't take you seriously if you indeed rush through this, and they won't understand what you're doing. So take your time. Take a breath. Pauses are welcome. It's like having good margins around a piece of paper, right? You don't want it too cluttered with too much data. Here we go. Take a deep breath. Solution recommendation, staged deployment. RCIT and DPSS will work together to plan and schedule site visits for the purpose of upgrading and training all eligible workstations. Certification is pending, and personnel who have not yet been upgraded to Windows 10. RCIT will work with the division coordinators on the schedule and then communicate with site coordinators per the communication plan. Now what really jumps out to this is that it says right there, solution recommendation. So we know what our solution recommendation is, and I always recommend if you have more than one solution option, put the recommended one up top. You're basically setting the stage with the best and most considered option. All others will be ancillary, and it will hopefully then better deliver the point about the recommended one. And for the record, in every project I've ever done, if you really think it through and lay this out correctly, they always accept the recommended one. Any questions about that? By the way, the hyperlink will take you through to a list of all of the workstations that are considered eligible and within scope. Moving on. This table will recreate this table with every solution options. This simply lays out the pros and cons, the assumptions, the risks, the costs, and any other supporting information to either make or break the case for this recommendation. First, pros. The pros of the staged deployment. It's a tried and tested process. Heck, we've done it twice already. Hands-on upgrade. A service rep will actually be in the field doing the upgrade themselves. And it includes instructor-led training. The cons requires field services travel. County of Riverside is one of the biggest counties in the United States. It takes about 2 hours to drive to the outer edge. So that means driving out and back consumes 2/3 of the day. So we have to take that into consideration. We must accommodate concurrent workload, meaning our field services staff are handling other activities as well. And user downtime. Users will need to be down for about an hour and a half to 2 hours while we perform the upgrade. This is only relative to an upgrade that might occur overnight in place through a mechanism like SSCM, which we decided that was not the most viable option. For the very reason of upgrade, we want to make sure that if there was a problem with that, this system might be left in an incomplete state overnight, requiring a field service rep to go out on site to perform the upgrade. Much better to do it in person. Assumptions and risks. Don't forget these assumptions. These things will come and bite you later if you forget them. Really spend some time on this. Assumptions. Resources will be available for the duration of the project. No stealing our human resources. Deployment will be limited to the eligible workstations. Don't be adding our hardware that was out of scope. Time to image estimates are accurate. I'm assuming that our field services staff are going to tell us that an hour and a half to 2 hours is accurate. If it takes 3 hours, the project is in trouble. DPSS site coordinators will assist with communication. We need their help. DPSS division coordinators will assist with scheduling. DPSS users will complete site prep activities. Base Win 10 image and group policies meet DPSS requirements. Existing printers will function with Win 10. Refresh project is complete, including problematic E7470s, a little bit of a piece of tricky hardware that we had to make sure that we identified as a tricky piece just in case it gives us problems. Levels of effort will letter of authorization will be approved for user support tech overtime. If we need overtime, like for example, driving out to the far end of the earth to do these upgrades, we're going to need maybe an hour or two of overtime to get our staff back that evening. Project escalations will occur in a timely manner. DPS's hardware refresh will occur on time and fully. GPO settings disable all macros with notification, a very specialized point that we learned from past deployments needed to be in place. Those are our assumptions, and the asterisk says assumptions may be indicative of project risk and will be closely monitored by the project manager. Any questions about that?
What do you mean by project escalations will occur in a timely manner?
That means if I see, let's say for example, I have a team member that is not performing their role, I'm not going to let that languish for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks before I take action, just giving him or her more time. I have a very particular process. You get one notice. If you don't respond by that time, I respond back and escalate to your supervisor. If you don't respond to that, escalate to the manager. I follow that process every time. Don't wait around, because otherwise those problems just get worse. Okay, we're down to 7 minutes. I think I might even be able to just do this with just a few minutes overtime, sorry. Okay, estimated cost. Hey, it's included in the, oh, I shouldn't talk like that. Okay, I forget who I'm with. I apologize, Mr. Ugarte and Mr. Gonzalez. Estimated cost, included in rate with exception of approved letter of authorization. So that means that to the customer, there's no extra cost. They pay us a monthly rate for our services.
Where are you reading that?
Over here, the far right, estimated costs.
Oh, okay.
So if this was indeed cost extra, there would be an estimate of how much this solution would cost. Okay, moving on down, risks. There's a risk and a response. And there's 3 ways to handle risk, as we learned in our lesson on Tuesday: mitigate, accept, and what was the other one? Avoid. Avoid, that's right. Resource availability. We're going to mitigate that by making sure that our resources are going to be assigned to the project. Imaging estimates and schedule. We'll mitigate that as well by really making sure that our sysadmin teams gives us good estimates with the field services team. Unreported applications. We'll accept that risk. Hey, there's a possibility that someone out there may simply not tell us about an app that they use, and it may turn out that it's not compatible with Win 10. There's nothing more we can do. We cannot really mitigate that risk other than what we're trying to do now, which is broadcast email to everybody. Send us your app. Send us your app. If you don't send us your app, we can't know that that app is out there. So we have to accept that. Personnel moves, mitigate via site coordinators. DPSS does a lot of personnel moves. We'll ask our site coordinators to help us identify when those moves happen in our user lists. Those are our 4 risks. More will come up. Okay, here's our timeline. Let me make that a little bigger. Remember before I said there would be no dates? There are no dates, but there are estimates of effort. So roughly following along this timeline, we can see that the planning phase, here's the way I would tell it to the customer. I keep dropping into teacher mode, and I got to drop back into project manager mode. I apologize for that. So Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Ugarte, if you choose this option, here's basically how the effort will break down. According to this timeline, upon the start of the project, we'll have about 4 months of planning and about 4 months of engineering. And you can see that the engineering and the planning can begin to kind of overlap. The team knows what the engineering work is, and they can actually begin that work before the planning is complete. They're followed then by a testing phase of 6 months and a deployment phase of 4 months. Now, at this point, what I've done is I've laid out the project, right? So once they say yes, if they give me a go today, then tomorrow, April 16th becomes the start date. That will be the planning phase. We'll have an April 16th start date, and we'll then be able to lay out, and we'll have a completion date on the books by the end of the day tomorrow.
Is there any way to collapse the testing phase to 4 months?
Thank you. You're almost like I planted you there. I didn't. Thank you, Juan. Wow, that is a great question. Actually, that jumped out to Juan, and it jumped out when I really did deliver this to the customer. That jumped out to them as well. They're like, "Why does it take 6 months to test and only 4 months to deploy?" Right? Of course, we're not in presentation mode right now. And I had good backing for this. So I went to, when I began the project, I went to the research organization Gartner, and I asked them, "Can you give me some information about Windows 10 testing for an organization of our size?" And they gave me documentation, which I read, that gave very clear guidance of how much time it would take to do our due diligence for an organization of our size, with the complexity of this hardware we had and the number of applications that had been identified. And guess what? That was 6 months. Now, when I did this in real life, when I responded just as I did to you, they accepted that, because I gave them good reason why it was 6 months. And I explained to them that if we don't do it in 6 months, we're at risk of encountering problems, mainly with the operating system not being thoroughly tested. And wouldn't that be a problem if we got 2,000 units deployed in the field, 2,000 units, and discovered a fatal flaw that required our team to go back out to all those sites and touch those machines again?
If you were to assign more resources to the testing, would that help?
No, thank you again for an excellent question. No, that would not help, because a lot of the testing requires time for issues to arise. Sometimes it's the way people do things, the way software is used. Sometimes there are just things that just don't show up after a certain amount of time. So it is important to have good test protocols, and we can apply people to run those protocols, but it's the exceptions to the protocols that sometimes elicit the problems.
Okay.
Or just time. They're like some problems are just time bombs.
Yeah.
All right, good. So now we've assuaged that particular concern. Let's pop back into presentation mode. So, Mr. Gonzalez, Mr. Ugarte, these are your project deliverables. You've probably heard me say in past meetings that if you were buying a truck at the car lot, this is the window sticker, all right? So this is what you get. This is the list of everything you get with this project. Now let's go over this one by one. First, the items listed here are the tangible and measurable outcomes that must be produced to successfully complete the project. These are the things the customer expects to receive to consider the project a success. And there are only 11 items. 1, hardware count. Description: identify all remaining DPSS hardware requiring Windows 10 upgrade. Responsible, DPSS. That simply means that the Department of Social Services is responsible to identify all of the hardware that we are going to need to upgrade. 2, hardware compatibility. Identify Windows 10 incompatible DPSS hardware that needs to be refreshed. RCIT, that's us. So of that list of all the hardware they're going to give us, we're going to examine those hardware against Microsoft specifications to identify hardware that will not accept Windows 10, that Windows 10 will not support or run on. And those machines, instead of being refreshed, upgraded, they will simply be refreshed. They will be taken away and a new machine will be given in their place. It's very important. You see how I'm divvying up the responsibility? DPSS, this is for you. RCIT, this is for you. If you don't identify that, then no one takes responsibility. 3, software identification. Identify all DPS software required to run on Windows 10, DPSS and RCIT. So send us your software, send us your software. Software compatibility. Assess identified software compatibility with Windows 10. That's RCIT's job. So they tell us, we and DPSS tell us what they need. We test to make sure that it works, along with RCIT, with DPSS. Software remediation. Remediate or replace Windows 10 incompatible software. If we find software that doesn't work or needs to be upgraded, we do that. And during our testing, we found several of our in-house created applications that did not play nice with Windows 10. Guess what we had to do? We had to spin off a separate project to upgrade those applications to make them Win 10 compatible. That was another good thing that we had the 6 months, right? It takes time to do that type of work. Develop Windows 10 image. Develop a Windows 10 image for use with this project. That's us, RCIT. Certify Windows 10 image. Certify via smoke, UAT, and pilot testing against all identified software. Mr. Gonzalez, Mr. Ugarte, these 3 types of testing are just different levels of testing. Smoke is just making sure that it turns on and no smoke comes out of the system. UA is making sure that a knowledgeable expert on the software says, yep, it's working as expected. And pilot is that long-term process of running it day in and day out to ensure that it really works.
So that's where the time went in on the
That's where the time. And we actually had 2 pilots. We had 2 phases of the pilot. Yes. Just to break on that, what we want to do for this is we want to have 2 phases of the pilot. It's 6 months, but phase 1 is a limited group, and then we're going to expand it to a much larger group in phase 2. Again, mitigating our risk. Okay, let's see, deliver Windows 10 training. Train all remaining DPSS personnel on Windows 10. That's up to DPSS. You have your staff development group. Deploy Windows 10. Deploy Windows 10 to all remaining identified workstations requiring upgrade. That's us, RCIT. Windows 10 supporting services. Identify and ensure functionality of required ancillary services such as VMware. Make sure all that extra stuff, that was bolt-on software, work as well. Win 10 support. Provide a consistent platform across DPSS for effective support, RCIT. That simply means that RCIT will make sure that our help desk is thoroughly trained on Windows 10, so when your users start calling in with Win 10 issues, we're not saying, I don't know how to repair Win 10. We will know how to, we are ready for you. Okay, Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Ugarte, do you have any questions about what is within scope, what you will get for this contract?
No, that's very clear.
Very good. Out of scope. Identified work that is beyond the current scope of this project. Hardware refresh. No hardware refresh planned for the project. In fact, when we started this project, we had no plan for hardware refresh. We ended up doing it because DPSS asked us to. But do you see the important thing? Let me just dwell on that. And I know we're just hitting the bottom of the hour, but let me dwell on that for just a moment. When I first created this project, I specifically called that out. No hardware refresh. No hardware refresh. Join me. No. Okay. And the reason I was doing that was I was worried that DPSS would come to us and say, as long as you're going out to the field, can you take these pieces of computers with you and just swap them out? That's a lot of work. We didn't scope out that timeline to accommodate that, right? So I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that wasn't in the plan. So guess what happened?
It happened at the end.
It did. They came and they said, hey, we've got these 500 extra machines out here. Can you take these out to the field? And what I said was, sure, we can do that, but remember, it's out of scope. So we're going to have to change the plan. We're going to have to, and I got an extra 6 weeks added onto the project to do that. Yes, Juan?
Was there any testing involved in the hardware refresh, or wasn't in the original testing?
Yes, that's a very good point. Yes, so we did that. We agreed to basically to replicate the test protocols that we had in the first case. It was much shorter in this case because the testing that we had done on the other had not revealed any serious problems. So we agreed to a much truncated, I think it was 6 weeks.
Did you spin off a new project for that?
No, we didn't. We incorporated it into the current project, and we're actually doing that right now.
Is it like a change order or something?
It was a change, yeah, there is a change. I created a change in the log and then went to the customer and said, here's what the change will cost you in terms of time. And they agreed to it, and I just added a 6 weeks to the project.
So did you do like an addendum to the document here, or?
No, did not change the contract, but I did add a change into the log. So it is logged there.
Okay.
Okay, the other thing was DPSS tablets upgrade. DPSS tablets will not be included in this upgrade project. Well, I knew that there were 400 tablets sitting out there in people's drawers and on people's desks, and I was a little bit worried that we would arrive at the site and they'd say, hey, that's great, you upgraded my workstation. What about this thing? So I wanted to make sure we called out, no tablets. Well, the way I did that was, well, I didn't do it that way. That sounds like I buy fiat. I said, no tablets. No, I don't have that power. I went to the Department of Social Services and I said, do you want those tablets included? And they said no. And then I wrote it out.
Okay. So you got them to agree that there was a
Yeah.
calendars.
And see, that was cool to do it that way, because if they had said yes, I'd say, okay, no problem. I just add it to the hardware list, and then instead of it taking 4 months to deploy, maybe it would take 5 months to deploy, right? But doing that up front gives me the peace of mind. Okay, back into presentation mode. Okay, great, Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Ugarte. Hopefully you understand and kind of keep that in your mind. This is what you're going to get if you accept this particular option, all right? At the end of the project, I'm going to bring this list up again, and we're not going to call this project complete until you agree that we've done all of that, okay, as a project. Okay, really quickly, agency responsibilities. The agency will identify division-level leads who will work with RCIT to plan and coordinate every aspect of the project, as well as a primary liaison, Corey T., and backup, Claudia O., to work closely with the RCIT project managers to help facilitate issue identification, management, and help coordinate deployment within each district office. Additional agency requirements include provide RCIT with space to set up a test lab at identified DPSS facilities for the duration of the test phases. Identification of all custom applications in use at DPSS which must run on Windows 10. Identification of application subject matter experts to assist RCIT in application testing. Now see, I have to catch out of mode. I have to catch myself. I know I'm a little over time and I'm speeding up. Drawback hurt. It's better to be consistent. Okay. Assignment of a staff development trainer and backup to develop and deliver training plan and materials. Provide on-site coordinators at each district office to work with the division coordinators to handle scheduling, communications, and issues management. So Mr. Gonzalez, in particular, this is what your agency will, Mr. Ugarte, you're the customer. Mr. Ugarte, this is what your agency will need to provide to the project. Is this clear and make sense?
Yeah, no issues there, and I've already spoken to Corey and Claudia.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great. Now, Mr. Gonzalez, you'll need to pay close attention, please, to this section. This is what we expect of RCIT. RCIT staffing requirements. RCIT will utilize individuals in the following roles to complete this project. RCIT executive sponsor, responsible for project success. BRM, responsible for as customer liaison. Project management team, responsible to manage project completion and project communication plan. RCIT team leads, responsible and accountable for team member deliverables. That's usually a supervisor. Systems administrators, responsible for image development plan and execution. Field services, responsible to deployment, for deployment plan and execution. Help desk, responsible for support readiness plan and execution. Applications developers, responsible for test plan and execution. Does that make sense within the confines of RCIT?
Yes, that sounds like us.
Great. And this is it. This is the last part, these last two paragraphs. Escalating issues. So, Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Ugarte, this is what you can expect if we have issues. You can expect this from me, okay? Project issues will be managed and escalated by the assigned RCIT project manager. Issues involving project participants will be escalated first to the participant's supervisor and then to the responsible manager. Risks will be identified in the risk log and shared via weekly project status reports. So, Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Ugarte, usually if we have an issue that's significant enough to escalate to your level, I'll be communicating to you simultaneously. I need you both to understand what's going on. Of course, I'm going to try to mitigate those issues long before they get to you. If they do get to you, though, please know that means that I'm having trouble moving them along, and I probably need your help. Okay, change management. Any changes to the project scope will be addressed by the project manager via formal change review. The options for managing change requests are to accept the change into the project, which may impact project deliverable dates and costs, or handling the change via ServiceNow request or separate project. So we can actually, changes will come, when I see a change that comes in, I'll formally record it, share it with you with our options. You will choose to accept it with whatever costs are involved. Costs can be time, a scope, or resources, and or it will simply decide to have that as a separate project or spin it off as a ServiceNow request. Do you have any questions about change management element? Mr. Gonzalez, Mr. Ugarte, that is our project proposal for you. What do you think of this proposal?
Works for me.
Ready to shake on it.
You ready to shake on it? Very good. All right. They're shaking. That's great. All right. And with that, this is the actual project start date. If we actually take a look at and we're about to be done, I know I'm over time. If we actually take a look at the Windows 10 project here, open that project up in SharePoint, you can see when that moment happened. Make this a little bit bigger. It happened on it happened on 4th of July last year, right? It was just about a year ago. Now, see, this time marker here, this milestone corresponds with the project proposal, right? I spent from April 17th to June 4th working on the business case. So give yourself a couple of months to work on that business case, right? And you can see the engineers got at it, right? And then it took me just under a month to get the project proposal agreed to. And when that handshake occurred, that's when the project start occurred. And that's when I was able to lay in all the rest. All of this up here basically corresponds to what we saw on the timeline up there. It's a pretty good match. And you can see that we are almost there, just about near the end of the project. All right, well, Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Ugarte, I want to thank you for your time. The project actually begins tomorrow. I will record the project as having a handshake today, and we'll begin the project dates tomorrow. I'm going to come back to you soon, probably within 2 weeks, with a project plan. The project plan lays out all of the detailed steps of how we're going to do this in terms of the tasks and the milestones and the dates that are associated with it, and we'll have real human being names associated with all of those tasks. It takes us about 2 weeks to put that together. Then we're going to have a real timeline, and you'll be able to see how your plan will begin executing. Also, as of now, begin to expect every 2 weeks from me on my Friday on, I'm going to be sending you a status report. The status report is a simple email that gives you a summary of our status. You'll see a color-coded health report. Green means healthy, yellow means at risk, red means we're in trouble, and also a list of what we completed, what's coming up, and any issues that may exist. In the meantime, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'll be contacting your various your assistants to schedule another meeting probably in about 2 weeks, all right?
Sounds great.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kurt.
You're very welcome. And cut. And Brittany, does that all make sense to you?
Yeah, that was great.
Very good. Well, actually, it actually goes even easier than that with customers. If you really work hard and develop this document well, you can usually knock this off in about half an hour with them smoothly, and you'll find that in almost every case they'll accept your proposal if you've got good facts to support what your argument. And they'll come to appreciate that in the future when they see what happens is once you get one or two a sponsor to do this once or twice, the next time they have a project that comes up, they're going to ask for you because they know that you're going to deliver a very clear plan of execution.
Great.
All right, and I'm sorry we went over time, everybody. Until next time, we'll see you again for Q2 Project Management. You can find us in RCIT in over County of Riverside in the core learning system. And you can also find us on YouTube. Until next time, make every meeting count. Okay, take care.